An emotional or psychological crutch is something that we rely on when we feel that we are vulnerable or we are in a situation that we can't handle. Today we're going to talk all about negative crutches and how we can finally let them go. Welcome back. My name is Nena and I'm a life coach that specializes in personal development. Here at this channel we talk about everything having to do with our emotional well-being, understanding our own psychology, and living our best life possible. So if you aren't already a subscriber, please take a moment and become one because we definitely want you to stay connected. So let's go ahead and get some things straight. Now, many things in life are perfectly acceptable in moderation, and most things in life are not actually black and white. Today we're going to be talking about emotional or psychological crutches that we use to help us get through difficult situations in our life. Now, if we think about what the word really crutch means, we know that it's something that we use to help us when we are hurt in some way. And we can think about emotional and psychological crutches really in exactly the same way. What we want to be careful of, however, is that they don't become a pattern of behavior, and that it's a pattern of behavior that is actually disruptive or destructive in our life. So today we'll be talking all about the crutches that can be negative in our life and how we can become much less reliant on them and really adopt new patterns of behavior. So let's talk about really what crutches are. Now, crutches can be, again, we talked about emotional or psychological. They can be intellectual, they can be chemical, and in some cases they can even be physical. It can also come down to thought patterns. So it could be something that we are intentionally choosing to believe. But it can be boiled down to anything that we are using as an escape in an unhealthy way. So a lot of times we come up with these different coping mechanisms because we feel, again, vulnerable or scared or overwhelmed. We don't feel like enough. We don't feel that we can handle it on our own. So we come up with all these different ways to feel safe and secure in that moment. This oftentimes stems from childhood, where we might have a favorite teddy bear or a lucky coin or whatever it was that gives us that sense of safety and security. So of course there can be, healthy and reasonable ways that we can use these crutches, if you want to call it that, but there are also very unhealthy ways as well. Now, as adults, we could have any number of crutches. It could be drinking, it could be smoking, it could be, scrolling through social media, it could be seeking out external validation, it could be gambling, it could be online shopping, it could be any number of things, but it's something that we are using as a buffer from either pain or to help us feel more secure again in that moment. I did want to give the caveat that crutches themselves don't necessarily have to be a bad thing in our life. They can actually kind of enhance our life or encourage healthy habits. So for example, your crutch might be practicing yoga or meditation or something else that actually has a lot of positive benefits. So for today's sake, we are simply looking for the things that are actually destructive in our life. And like I touched upon at the beginning of the video, a lot of behaviors are actually very acceptable in moderation. So if there are things that you do every great once in a while, we are human beings and we don't want to put a lot of different restrictions on our life if we are not being excessive about them. So that being said, let's look at some of the ways that we can tell if something is a negative crutch in our life. The first thing is if something is clearly and obviously dangerous. So here we are just using our common sense. So if we are engaging in something that is illegal or drugs or something that is attempting to give us some kind of physical rush but is putting us in actual danger, we know right away that that is an extremely dangerous crutch. Another thing to look for is if something is addictive in nature and in a negative way. So it doesn't have to be something that dramatic. It could be as simple as eating in a very unhealthy way or going to comfort foods that we know are bad for us, and we do this every single time we're uncomfortable. The second thing is having a crutch that is not always going to be available to us. So if we have a physical item or we have an activity that is not going to be something that we can do every single time that we have that need or want to do it, then that is also something that is going to be a negative for us, because we're going to panic when we aren't able to do that activity or have whatever it is. So again, you want to make sure that it's something healthy in the first place, but you also want to make sure if you have a crutch that is something that you can do every single time. So for example, meditation is something that's always available to you whenever you would need it. The third thing we might look for is if something makes you feel bad about yourself or is pushing you in the wrong direction in life, or something that you may feel some guilt for doing. So those are all clear indications that this crutch is not healthy for you. The fourth thing to look for is anything that is allowing us not to face reality. Now that could be, again, an activity or a belief system or a thought pattern, but something that is really shielding us from the truth, something that is really buffering us from having to look at our life in a realistic sense. So if you listen to the list and some of these things, or even one of these things, really rings true for you, what can you do about it? So let's go over a list of how we can effectively start moving past the kind of addiction or reliance on these crutches so we can have freedom in our life and address these situations in a much more positive and healthy way. The first thing always is self-analysis. So we need to get to the root of why we adopted this crutch to begin with. So what is the root cause? What is the fear that we have? We usually use these crutches as a blanket, a safety blanket, so we don't have to face something. So we need to know what it is that we are avoiding, and we need to figure out why are we avoiding them in the first place. Is it too painful? Are there open issues? What is at the root of this actual problem? The second thing we need to figure out is why we feel that we can't do it alone. Why do we feel that we need a crutch? So obviously we feel incapable for some reason of handling these situations, but how did we get there? Why do we feel that we are not in control of our lives? Why do we feel that we need these external activities or thoughts or behaviors to help us out? The third thing we want to ask ourselves is, how did I start to be reliant on this crutch to begin with? So what was the actual origin of this crutch? When was the first time I started doing this or thinking this way? That is very important to think about so you know where you were emotionally at that time. So you remember that you're not the same person that you were at that time, but if you're engaging in the same behaviors and the same thought pattern, it's keeping you stuck in that same period of your life. The fourth thing to ask yourself is, how could I feel supported if I did not have this crutch? So if this crutch was no longer an option for me, how could I have my needs met? How could I feel safe? How could I feel secure? How could I better feel that I am in control of my life? And number 5 is finally asking ourselves, what replacement habits could I put into my life that are much more positive and actually beneficial? So if we feel that we do need some kind of a crutch because we feel that we're not really ready to stand on our own 2 feet, that is perfectly acceptable, but what habits could actually enhance my life? So think about the different strategies that you could use to have your needs met in a much healthier and productive way. Getting rid of emotional and psychological crutches is the most freeing thing in the world, and it also is empowering because it proves to you that you are in control of your life and you have always been in control of your life. I know it doesn't always seem that way, but that is the actual reality. And starting to let go of these negative things in our life that really truly hold us back is nothing but further proof and further empowerment for you to go on and lead your best life. So I wish you so much luck and love in this process, and if you are willing to share, let me know in the comments below what it is that you are working on. What crutches do you want to let go of? Everybody has them, so it's just a matter of putting your finger on what it is, noticing that you are doing it, and then working through the issues in your life so that you can replace these habits with much more positive things. So I hope this video was helpful to you, and if it was, please like it and share it with someone else who may need to hear this very same message today. Also, again, if you aren't already a subscriber, please take a moment and become one. We definitely want you to stay connected, and I thank you so much for spending time with me today. Have an absolutely amazing day.